If you've been reading the Bible like a math textbook, then you're going to miss a lot of meaning from Scripture. Because the numbers in the Bible are not necessarily supposed to be literal, they're supposed to tell a story. The writers of the Bible were not mathematicians. They weren't trying to give you exact numbers. They were trying to provide you with theological understandings, meanings that were deeper than the numbers, and more often than not, the biblical writers were actually artists writing poetry to show us a beautiful picture. Today I want to look at the 6 most used numbers in the Bible and what their meaning actually is, because behind the literal number, there's something the author is trying to get us to understand. The first number is 7, or in the Hebrew, Sheva. One of the first places that we see the number 7 is actually in the literal creation in the Genesis account on the first page of the Bible. God creates the world in 6 days, and then on the 7th day, he rested. And if you're reading this, you might just skip over it and say 7 days, that's an arbitrary number. But in the ancient Near Eastern context, this was the time period that they would use to dedicate completely a temple to their gods. In the 7-day time period, they would get all the preparations ready, and on the 7th, they would dedicate it to whatever deity they were getting it ready for. If you were an ancient Israelite reading this back, you would have seen the number 7 and realized that this is a ceremony that God is doing intentionally. That he hasn't just picked 7 days just for some arbitrary reason, but God has actually picked 7 days so that we would understand and they would understand that God is taking his rightful place as Lord over this entire planet. That he is dedicating the earth to himself. From the very beginning, God is setting up a place for his presence, that this is his rightful throne. This is why on the 7th day, he sits down and he rests. And this idea of sitting down and resting is a throne picture, that he has become the king over all of creation. The number 7 depicts something being done completely and being dedicated towards something. This is why in Joshua 6, when the Israelites march around Jericho 7 times for 7 days with 7 prophets and 7 trumpets and 7 times on the 7th day, it's important. This number being repeated is not just an accident. It's not just weird happenstance that God continually asks for 7 of things. It's for a reason. When the Israelites actually walk around 7 times for 7 days and then 7 times on the 7th day, they are doing a liturgical ceremony hearkening back to the covenant with God, dedicating the land of Canaan back to God. Even if you look at Leviticus 16, the Day of Atonement ceremony, the priests sprinkle blood 7 times because 7 is the idea of completeness or wholeness. So when you see the number 7 in the Bible, stop and realize that something deeper is happening. It's not just a number being thrown out. It's a recognition of holiness, of dedication, and of completeness. The second number is 3, or in the Hebrew, shalosh. There are 2 major meanings to the number 3 that you need to look out for. One is that it is the sign of completeness or a wholeness. The second, it is the idea of emphasis. You can almost think as the number 3, or if something is done 3 times, said 3 times, it's like the author is trying to highlight it for you, trying to show you that, one, it's established, but also it's extremely important. For one example, we go to John chapter 21, where Peter has betrayed Jesus 3 times completely. But then Jesus comes to him after his resurrection and he asks, "Do you love me?" 3 different times. And each time Peter says yes. And if you notice, Jesus doesn't actually change the topic or continue in the conversation until Peter has said that he loves him 3 times. You might be asking yourself why, or it might seem like Jesus is just kind of being a little bit frustrating towards Peter. But what he's doing is he's completely establishing him, because when Peter says he loves him 3 times, that 3 is extremely important. It's establishing that he is for sure and he's completely restored. He's all the way back in. Or you might think of Isaiah 6 or Revelation chapter 4, where the angels and the priests, they cry out, "Holy, holy, holy." They're not just repeating it like in a modern worship song. They're establishing that it is fully true. He's not only holy, he's holy, holy, holy. They're putting an emphasis, they're underlining. And so when you see something repeated 3 times, you need to realize that it is extremely important. Don't just rush past. The author is trying to tell you this is one of the most important things that you're going to read today. You can think about Jesus being in the tomb for 3 days, or Jonah being in the belly of fish for 3 days. The idea is that they were completely dead, that it was the end. It was a complete death, a complete dissension. Even you can think about the 3 in the Trinity. It is a complete group. Third, we have the number 12, Shanaim Asar. The number 12 is used over and over and over in the Bible. You can think of the 12 tribes of Israel. You can think of the 12 administrators in Solomon's court. The 12 disciples is one of the biggest ones. And the number 12 is not arbitrary and it's not accidental. 12 was actually a mirror for the lunar months of the year, and it was the idea in ancient Near Eastern culture that 12 was the exact number of a divine government. We have to realize that 12 is over and over the number that Jesus picks. One that I think is the most important for us to look at when we look at the number 12 is Jesus' 12 disciples. Why is it that he picked 12? Yes, there's a reestablishing of ancient Israel within Jesus' core group. But more than anything, 12 is the number that they would have seen as being the core group for setting up a new divine government. So when Jesus sets up the 12 disciples, he is making a cosmic declaration that he's bringing a new kingdom. He could have gone with 15, he could have gone with 10, he could have just talked about the 70 that he had with him, but him talking about the 12 over and over and over and bringing along the 12 is him declaring upon all evil powers that he's coming in with might, and he's coming in with a new structure and a new kingdom that will last forever. So when you see the number 12, wherever it is in the Bible, realize that it's making the point that God is doing something new, that God is setting up a kingdom. He's setting up a new way, and he's declaring at some level political war against the evil powers of this world and also of the entire universe. Next, we're going to look at the number 40. Arabim. Number 40 comes with the idea of a complete time of testing. That if you can get through 40 of something, 40 days, 40 nights, 40 years, then you have been tested completely. So you can think of Jesus on his 40-day fast in the wilderness. You can think of Noah in the ark for 40 days. And you can even think of the Israelites 40 years in the wilderness. So when you see the number 40, you have to realize that something is being done intentionally. It's not just a time period that somebody had to go through, but it was a specific test for a specific reason. You can even think of Moses when he went up on Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. When you read that, you can't just go by it and say, oh, well, he was up there for an amount of time. You have to realize that God is doing something. He's testing a person or a group of people for a very specific result. Now, when you read the Bible, stop whenever you see the number 40. Ask yourself the question, what is God trying to teach them? Why is God trying to test them? Because it's not an accidental test, it's a divine test trying to figure something out. Next up, we have 70 or Shivaim. And 70 honestly is one of the most interesting in the entire Bible, and it's one that I don't think a lot of people know about. And so this is really important to lock in. This number 70 originates all the way back in Genesis chapter 10 when God lists all the Gentile nations of the world. There are 70. And if you can remember, there's the story of the Tower of Babel where God disperses the 70 nations out all over the earth. Then he takes one of the 70 and he takes them for himself, a nation unto himself, the one, with the purpose that the one will be able to draw the rest and the 70 will be able to be whole once again. So then when we see in the New Testament that Jesus has, yes, his 12, but then he has a greater group of 70 that he sends out unto the nations, we have to realize that he's doing something that harkens all the way back to Genesis 10. In Genesis chapter 10, the people disperse into 70 nations, and the Bible says that the rulers of the earth, literally talking about the demons and Satan's followers, take over the 70 nations. Then we get all the way to the New Testament, and Jesus doesn't just want one of his people groups, he wants all of them back. And so he gets 70 followers and he sends them to the nation. Jesus is not picking a random number, he is reestablishing his claim on all of humanity. He's switching from a focus on Israel to a focus on the entire world. This is straight up spiritual warfare. Jesus, in picking 70 followers to go out into the world, is saying to Satan, I'm coming back for my children. You better be ready. This is a declaration of war on all of the evil spiritual powers in this world. So in the Bible, when you see the number 70, you have to realize that it represents God's family, but also spiritual warfare because Jesus is coming back for his kids. To be honest with you, this video could be an hour long because every number in the Bible means something. Because the biblical authors very often were not trying to give you a literal number. They were trying to give you a meaning and an understanding of something that's happening beneath the surface. If you have a number that you're interested in, a number that you think repeats in the Bible, go ahead and drop it in a comment because I'd love to make another video discussing more numbers because the Bible is so full of meaning if we're willing to just look under the surface. If you want to continue on this journey with me, finding new understandings of the Bible, go ahead and subscribe and like this video.